Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Latinx YC, where we discuss all things related to U.S. politics from a Latino, Latina, and Latinx perspective. Hola, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, mi amor, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien.
It's so happy to see you.
Semi-summer. I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt. I remember when we started this podcast, we were wearing like scarves and
Sweater. Yes.
Yes. So how
it's a beautiful
times have
day.
changed. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, everyone. I am Clemencia Herrera, and I'm founder of Moira Studio, an agency that specializes in political advertising to Latinx.
And I am Cecilia del Cid, an environmental and social justice practitioner, Latin American immigrant, community weaver, and working in communications.
And beautiful person, too.
Tan chula. Gracias.
We love
Same as you.
Ceci.
We are CNC. We are like the best team.
Oh, that's right. CNC. So many C's. Me and my husband are also CNC because his name is Carlos. All these CNC.
Yes.
Sí.
We're cardboard
Sí, señora.
chains. Sí, señor.
Sí, señora.
So, Clemencia, tell me, what are we talking about today?
So last week it was very data driven, and we were talking about a lot of facts, and we thought that this episode we want to come back inside. And it's a topic that is so near and dear to my heart because I lived it in my own skin, and
Okay.
it's basically the foundation of where we need to go and what we need to do to move forward as a community. And so today we're talking about empowerment.
Important. Empoderamiento.
I know that this is a buzzword in many different places, and many nonprofit organizations use it, but I want to really talk about like what really is that, and where does it come from, and how do you get it, because basically, in my opinion, empowerment is not something that you give. I know a lot of organizations say, oh, we want to empower, Empowerment, in my opinion, it's something that comes from within. You may be given tools to be empowered and information, but nobody can empower you. Nobody can give you that. It's something that you come up with it on your own. I don't know what you think.
I think that you are correct. And I also think that empowerment can be weaved so that we can help each other build grassroots power, community power, communal power. If we think of each other as individuals who have strengthened that muscle, that fiber, and then you can begin to make those connections and slowly, weave a fabric that becomes resistant and becomes powerful. So absolutely, I agree with you that it is something that we all have to cultivate, that no one can give it to us. I think that we can learn it if we have good models. I think that it becomes easier to see if someone gives you tools or examples, or when you can see other people that you find affinity towards doing it. But you are correct. I think it begins, the seed has to be planted inside first.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that word weaved. I love that because it really talks about how it's a communal thing. It's not just, it doesn't come from one direction. It comes from many different directions.
Absolutely.
So you're weaving this, texture,
Yes.
from all kinds of different places. And I have, I have a lot of experience in, my own empowerment. I especially like looking back on it, and it wasn't like a one-dimensional thing. It was, it was a process, and and it took years. It was like, in my case, there's been so much healing that I've had to do, and I kind of talked about it a little bit over past few episodes about the healing that I've had to do from being ashamed of who I was, of being an immigrant, of having curly hair, or having the accent, of having my skin color, growing up where I did, or being Colombian, all of that, to actually, coming up with the changing the paradigm to saying, I'm not just okay with being different. I am proud to be different.
Yes.
And I am going to use the fact that I'm different to do something different as well. And that actually fed my empowerment. And I know people's empowerments are fed in many different ways, but for me, it was pride in also trusting myself and being proud of who I was. So that was like one of them, one of the things that fed my empowerment. And then the second one, it was almost like a turning point, because there were many things that were happening in my life at that moment. But years ago, Moira got to work with the campaign for Sharice Davids. And she's a congresswoman from Kansas, and she is actually one of the first Native American women to be elected to Congress. And
congratulations.
At the time that I was working with her, I didn't really realize, how historical this was. This was obviously like, hey, we're gonna make this ad. We're gonna make it look awesome, just like we always strive to do. And we, as usual, we put our heart and soul into this campaign, and we came up with this awesome ads. And then when she got elected, and I realized how historical that was, I was like, wait a minute, that was actually pretty powerful right there. And I realized how much power I could have in people's lives and in advancing progressive ideas. And I said, hey, if little me can do something so, I don't know, groundbreaking and historical, little everyone can also do amazing things in their own ways. And so empowerment became such an important topic to me, and such a powerful concept for everyone to own that, to the point that I feel like it needs to be spoken about over and over again.
Yes,
what was
absolutely.
your path? Do you have a path to empowerment?
I think so. I think so. I think that some of the differences I think that we have shared in the past between your experiences and mine is that I grew up until my early adulthood in a place in which I was kind of like part of the dominant culture, in the sense that I was mestiza in Guatemalan, from a family that was working class, but that could, that was very committed to my education and really invested in that effort. So I never really thought about my identity. I wasn't indigenous, I knew that. So were there a lot of those marginalized identities? I was a woman, but I grew up with a father or a parents saying to me, you can do whatever you want to study, and was encouraged even to like pursue an educational path outside of Guatemala, right? So I could I left my home, and I went to live abroad, and it's not like that I couldn't have those opportunities to me. I think if I would have had a brother, the same opportunities would have been offered. So there was not that much at that particular moment in time. I was still, I think, not gendered enough to like all those things were weighing on how I was being raised. Not that being a woman in Latin America doesn't have kind of like layers of disadvantage. It does. So I think for me, my empowerment always came through the access to education that I was kind of feeling. I always felt very connected to kind of my intellectual capacity. I think that there have been moments, and I think I've shared this before, in academia, when I've been stripped of that trust and self-trust, and I began to doubt my capacity, and kind of like they talk about in the United States, that's imposter syndrome, and you begin to doubt if you are like, do they made an error when they let me into this school? You know, why am I not being as good as the rest of my classmates? And you realize that these institutions are just
all
not
about that imposter syndrome.
They are not it's not you. They are just not prepared to actually serve people who have different needs and different paths and different support systems and stories, right? So for me, I think I didn't begin to think about, so I felt disempowered first because I had never thought about it. And then something that I identified very greatly with, which was my intellectual capacity, felt very diminished. And I began to really doubt it, specifically in some professional settings. So then I had the opportunity.
Who do I need to punch?
I'll tell you later. I can plan this.
Give me a hit list.
And then I had the opportunity. Life provides you with healing, like you were saying. And I think I was given the opportunity, and the name of the position that I was given, I was like refugee and immigrant safety and empowerment kind of like advocate. It was called, I was the RISE advocate, and I came to work as an advocate. It was one of my first kind of totally advocacy roles, working with refugees and immigrants who were survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. It transformed me. These people who came to me in some of their, came to the organization, but that crossed my path, and I had the opportunity to accompany them in a very short and very kind of this direct moment in their lives. I was just there kind of to like walk the path with them. They had to do it on their own. I think that that's when I began to see what true empowerment was. And I think that what I share when I think of empowerment is that I believe that comes with transparency, and it comes with actually giving back the freedom that when people disempower you, they take away your power and your control. So when survivors of domestic violence have been, when you look at the cycles, they are in cycles of power and control. Someone exerts power and control over every aspect of their lives. Sometimes we think it's like we only think about it just being physical, but it's not. So when I was in this process, I began to see people who sometimes would be in moments of such a difficult moment in their lives, when they would be like, just tell me what to do, I will do it. And how it would be like, let me give to you, transparent, good information so you can make an educated decision. And you understand what are the consequences from each decision so you can know what you can live with. And many of them at that moment, I think, felt like, you don't want to help me. And then they will sit with it. And then we will get the conversations back. And then when I found them years later, when I would bump into them and I realized we went through all these processes, they allowed themselves to learn, they allowed themselves to make their choices in their time. It was not my life. I didn't need to leave anyone.
Right.
When they look back at their path, they can say that they have done that. And to me, that became kind of like the true example of what empowerment means. When you can take good information, when you can then make the decisions that are best for you, and that you can live with the consequences of those decisions. That's when I think about empowerment. And I think that to work with people that have been stripped of that, and to see them flourish again, and to trust themselves again, because that's the thing about being disempowered, that what you are not trusting is your guidance, that little voice here or in the pit of your stomach, that one that, like or in the back of your head, the one that says like oh, or like pay attention, what's going on, and you don't begin to doubt it to the point when you trust other people's advice more than you trust that. And I think that being able to so what I was able to create was enough space for people to sit with that discomfort and those boundaries, right? Like, I cannot make the decision for you because I don't get to live with the consequences of that decision.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that doesn't mean that I didn't have an opinion, but my opinion didn't really matter, right? I don't have to live with it. And I think that's what I think about when I think of empowerment. It's like giving it back to someone else, nourishing that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking about, like hearing my own story and now listening to yours. That is such a beautiful thing that we both came to realize what empowerment was through service, like through service to others. And it's like that power of, association of saying, I am seeing what I can do with others, or like I'm seeing through the eyes of others what can be done, so I can realize what I can do as well. So it's like this, it's like that third degree kind of thing that you're seeing, that other person is doing that because I open up that space.
Yes.
It really gives you that perspective of empowerment and like just realizing what you can do and how powerful you are and how powerful as human beings, as intelligent human beings we can be. And I'm not saying you and me. I am talking about everyone. And especially, Latinx who have been so disempowered over time.
I also want to say that I think people who are investing in these empowering communities are investing in isolation and disconnection. So when I think of survivors of violence or assault, or these people in these very vulnerable positions, they have been isolated. That's how their power was taken away, because they have been put in a position in which they don't have people that really care about them to trust them. So if we take that example and think of our communities, and we realize that we have been disconnected. Sometimes we as individuals have been disconnected from our communities by creating a lot of shame, or by, by saying, or by devaluing features, physical features, identities. And sometimes we end up just in total isolation. And that's what I think when I think of weaving, maybe because I also think a lot of like Guatemalan and like Colombian, like some of the best things that I like about is like to see what our communities built, or like what some of the things that are most representatives about our communities. I always think like sometimes in Guatemalan weavings you have like cotton, but then every once in a while you have like silk threads in there, right? And they have different consistency. Some are more vulnerable than others, or sometimes they're different qualities. But like when you have something well weaved, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if some of the threads are more, vulnerable, or more delicate, or more coarse. Like they all have their own space. They all come into the process at the exact time, and we have a tapestry or a textile that is beautiful, but also that is resistant. It's resistant to weathering. It's resistant to pulling. So when we put our effort to connect with each other again and empower, so if I feel empowered, I can model good behaviors for other people, advocate for other people, I can put my service towards my community. We can begin to construct collective power, which I think is quite scary for some people.
Yeah, and that is a human thing, and I've read a lot about it. People are scared of success, and I know that it sounds ridiculous out there for you listening, but it is. And some people might be afraid of taking action because then they're like accountable for that.
Yes.
You know, like, oh, you've taken action, so now what? And then people start looking to you for like, what's next? Like, what are the next steps? And then people are like, oh, so it's kind of like that. That success people might be, you know, kind of scared about, and that's okay. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing,
Nobody
guys.
knows.
If you think of doing something, nobody knows what they're doing. So don't be afraid to take action. You can ask, you know, people in like really high places, and they could tell you.
Everyone
I
is
don't know what I'm
faking
doing.
it. You're telling me that everyone is faking it until they make it?
I don't think faking it, but it's just basically like, you know, even if people have tread a path, everyone is treading their own path. Like everyone is walking a very unique, innovative path, and nobody has done that before.
Yes.
And nobody will do that again. So, you know, in your unique life, your unique way of thinking, and what you're trying to do is absolutely yours only.
So
nobody can teach you how to do that. Yes, you can go to education. You can go to college. You can get a bunch of degrees. You can have mentors. But nobody will actually teach you exactly what that path is for you and what you need to do in it. So really, everyone is doing something so unique that they don't know what they're doing, and they're just like learning along as they go in life, and that's life.
And you know what I was saying, you know, when you tell someone like, these are your options, right? Like, oh, you know, someone comes and you were like, okay, let's evaluate the situation. You can do A and X, Y, and Z will happen. You can do B and A, B, C will happen. And what you were saying, accountability. If I tell you what to do and you go and you do it and it doesn't work out, you can come back and tell me it's your fault. You told me to do this, and look at my life, it fell apart. And when you don't, as a, you know, someone, a companion, an advocate, and you say like, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, you need to decide what to do, you are giving people the power back and also the responsibility back for those options, for those decisions. And accountability is such an important part of any healing, of any restorative practice, of any transformation that we want to do to our political system, our you know, our historical, you know, trajectory. We need to be able to know how to be accountable, not only from what we have done personally, but also to understand what we have benefited from, just sometimes by identities, sometimes by spaces that we occupy, like having an education, like speaking multiple languages, being born in a upper, you know, as an upper class, or like being able to live, you know, to have a roof over your head and food every night in your table. So not every privilege is the same, but we all hold those identities and always have some that have given us an extra edge, or like have eliminated obstacles. And I think accountability is super important for empowerment, because that is when because if you own your decision and then you fail, you can learn and you can wear your scars with pride. I always feel like that we have such an investment to avoid failure. And this is when I always think about, like, I love my scientific background, because as a scientist, you are trained to fail. You run an experiment and it fails. You run another one, and so you tweak it, and you run it again and it gets better, but it fails. Like, and you document all your failures. What we don't do well is we don't publish them. You only publish when you have like figured the next discovery. But that, because we don't share our failures, which are just like trials, that means that someone else is repeating the same mistakes that we did.
Yeah.
Because we have a way of thinking.
I love that. I love that way of thinking because I don't deal well with failure yet. I'm still in my path to learning how to handle it better, and I'm really hard on myself when I fail, and it's really debilitating, because like life is hard already, and
Yes.
and if you're on top of that, saying, oh, I failed, I'm the worst, I can't, blah, 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 then life gets even harder. and we're not, none of us were trained to fail, and in that same turn, we weren't trained to really celebrate small successes. Like, it has to be like this incredible thing that has to happen in order for people to celebrate it. It's also, like you said, one of the things that I did, some time ago, to like help me with, really like appreciating who I am, is like writing 3 things that I'm very proud of, even if they were really small. Like,
Yeah.
I called a longtime friend of mine today. Oh, that's something, took out the time to do something. That's great. I don't know. It's just like, even if it's small things that, took you some effort or time, or you failed and you learned from it and you tried it again and then it worked, even if it's small, it's good to have that mental training. And for people out there that are like working 1,000,000 hours a week, putting food on their kids' table, that's a huge accomplishment
Every day.
And maybe people don't celebrate it, and it's a thankless job. I know, because I know people that do it, and it's a thankless job. Nobody's out there going, thank you for putting this food in front of me. But it is. Think about it. It's and there's so many. There's just so many instances that just people don't think that it's an accomplishment, or that it has to do with power. And it's like, we really have to start thinking about how powerful we are, about changing and moving things forward in the world, in our lives, and within ourselves. I mean, as Latinos, we've accomplished so much. I know that people are still saying, yes, there's much to do. Yes, but
Absolutely.
at the same time, we have accomplished so much. We've migrated, and we have, broken through like 1,000,000 different barriers and different systemic, barriers, and we've accomplished so much as a community, and we've been able to be resilient about it, and so this whole way of thinking really indicates of how powerful we are as a unit and as a unified community.
Yeah. I think, where I always go when it comes to systems of oppression, I think that some of those kind of like messages we receive have to do a lot with productivity, right? Like, this idea that we kind of fail has to be like, I find it very capitalistic, and like, we're all climbing the ladder, we're all trying, like, there is no time to rest.
Rat race.
Que madruga, Dios lo ayuda,
Ayuda,
so this idea, like, you have to work really hard to, if you work hard, you will be rewarded. And believe me, I think I am a person who values hard work. I'm a person who values good quality work. If I'm doing something, I want it to be if it has my name attached to it, I want it to be the best. And when things don't work, like when I feel like right now, I think I'm in a position professionally in which I'm learning a lot of very new stuff. And I am, my inner critic shows up really harsh, shows up with a big whip, and he like whips me down. And I don't celebrate how much I have learned about something totally new, and how much, like, we do the podcast, and it's been such a growth experience, and it has empowered me. How much I thought about like putting my thoughts out there. I always feel like, am I gonna say something wrong? What if I don't express myself perfectly? What if I cause some harm? How am I going to be accountable to myself, to my community, to the people that we're talking about? How are we going to push each other to really think deeply about the things, the issues that we want to cover? So I'm always thinking, like, it feels very like vulnerable, and we don't do that like moment of celebration of saying that, but a step, like pasito a pasito, like we keep moving forward. And one thing that I used to tell my students when I was in higher education was, let's fail forward. It's very important to learn to fail forward. If you fail, there is you have heard of Facundo Cabral in Latin America. Have you ever heard him? So there is a song, it's like, si pierdes la batalla, no pierdas la lección. If you lose the battle, don't lose the lesson. So I think it's really important, because the only time you grow is when you have fallen out of your comfort zone. If you are not failing, you have your box and you are in it, and that's where you live. And success is somewhere out there, and I hope that is beyond our wildest imagination. I think I remember our dear, a person that has guided me a lot, Ari, and she always tells me, like, let's believe that the universe is a greater imagination than we do. Whether you call it source, God, the universe, the supreme creator, whatever it's your, So I think as community, we are so caught up, and there is forces that want to keep us all caught up, so that we have our heads down and we keep doing the grind. We have to allow ourselves a space to imagine new things, to expand, to create a future politically, communally, scientifically, educationally, that goes beyond what exists right now, because it leaves so many people out. I was thinking,
and you, I know who you're talking about, because we both know Ari, and Ari, I mean, she's such a wise person. She's also told me, and this is, I'm gonna pose this question to everyone out there. What does it mean to have it all?
Yes.
And don't limit yourself. Doesn't mean having $1 million house, or having a job as whatever. What does it mean to have it all?
Yeah.
And that, you can get it. And I know, like, this all sounds like this discourse that everybody's always saying, but we are just as powerful to do that. We are powerful enough to achieve having it all. And I know that, maybe it sounds really far away for some people, and I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it's attainable.
Yes.
And it will just take some wits, and it will take effort, and it will take help. But it's attainable, and that is the beginning of the path to empowerment, believing and trusting.
But I also say that it shouldn't be difficult. Like, I think that sometimes we just need to flow, like, relax and go with the river. The best things will come out. I
in a way I agree, in a way I don't. I think you also have to swim lots.
No, you have to swim. You need to learn to swim. You need to learn to float. You need to be able to, like, float.
Yeah.
But I think the path of least resistance, like, when things, for me, I think sometimes, because we are so conditioned, and we envision success or the future in very specific ways, we don't allow ourselves to be surprised either. And I think that it doesn't have to be particularly easy, but it doesn't have to be particularly hard. I think that there has to be an ease for things that are for you. There is
in a way, and we do have to wrap up really soon. In a way, what I've learned in this, there's a saying in Spanish, and I can't remember, donde hay una puerta cerrada or something like that.
Cuando una puerta se cierra, una ventana se abre.
Something like that. But the point is that if there's any closed doors, I know people are like, you gotta break through the door. maybe it's just not the flowing way. Like if there's a closed door and you're putting all this effort and like time and like it's really not opening, maybe it's just not where you're supposed to flow. Usually when things are like meant for you, things flow. And so it's like, keep changing things, keep trying things. And like this whole like failure thing, let's try. And that if that failed, that means that there's a closed door. And so that means that there's an open door somewhere else. And so all this like flowing, really, it's like you're flowing through this river and there's gonna be boulders. And so you hit this boulder, but you gotta go, around the boulder, and then there's gonna be some flowing other, and then there's like, there's like a little like branching off of the river. Maybe you go over there, and then there's like a boulder there, like a huge one, so you gotta swim back and then go back to the main one, and you get the analogy.
I know. And I think so I want to pose this question back to you. What are we talking about empowerment today? And what does this have to do with our political conversation we've been having in all these weeks?
Well, first, in a way, we wanted to sort of wake up something inside of people's minds and like think about, our own lives and like what we're doing in where does our path of empowerment lie? Like where everyone has just like levels of assimilation. We all have a place in the path of empowerment, and maybe some people are like really ahead, and so people are just beginning to wake up into their empowerment. And so I want to pose this question to you, where are you at in your empowerment? What is it where is it that you learned about empowerment, and like is there any turning point in your life in which you felt more empowered than others, or like you understood the concept? Because you gotta just like really feel it in your skin, in your guts. You gotta feel that. It's not like you read it in a book and you're like, oh, okay. So basically what we're trying to do is sort of like wake up that little spark inside of you. Think about it, and then I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 to this, because we have so much more to talk about. Because we're talking about the inside, but now let's talk about the next. In the next part, we're going to talk about the outside. So it's like, where should we start in order to empower others? Because like you and me learn about empowerment through service. How can we serve to open up that space to empower others? And so that's gonna be part 2. And but that's not gonna be next week, because next week we're gonna take a 1 week break, because I am going to be taking a little bit of a vacation, which I need. I need to get some sun and ride my bike and hang out with my husband and read some books.
Wonderful.
And then the week after, we have a very special guest. I'm so excited. We're gonna have Helen Torres, and she's the CEO of Hope Hispanas, organized for political equality. And then we're going to be talking to her. I'm very excited to talk to her. And so then the week after, we'll do a part 2 to the empowerment.
Because I think we want to hear about. It will be excellent if in the meantime we had some examples from our community and listeners about how they have built power for themselves and for their local communities or their, families, groups.
Yes, I love to hear that.
Yes.
So get in touch with us. We have social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LatinXYZ Pod, and there's an email, Clem, CLEM, at latinxyzpod.com.
Excellent.
Email me, tell us your stories, give us a review, and we will see you in 2 weeks.